blend a half a dozen Bic lighters. I love my new iPad, but will it blend? That is the question.
There's a guy in a lab coat with glasses asking, will it blend? This is brilliant.
You may have seen him on YouTube in those Will It Blend videos. From Blendtec, please welcome Tom Dickson. Tom, come on out.
Don't breathe this.
Okay, here we go. Stand by and action.
Just for fun, I went around the office and I stole every car key fob I could find. Let's see what happens when I blend.
Yeah, so today we're gonna blend car remotes. It's one of our things. We have about 4 we're gonna do today. And look at that new jar. Look at that new artwork. That's really cool. I really like that. I've been away from Blendtec for about 8 years, but the Blendtec blender is still the strongest blender in the world. And that's just me. That's not an ad. That's just fact.
And I even have a blender remote.
There have been a lot of copycats that have come, a lot of other, shapes and sizes, but the science behind the Blendtec blender is way beyond just producing, something with a blade to chop up your food. Way beyond.
Tom Dickson and I were born within 2 weeks of each other. We're the same age, and when we were 13 years old, we just turned 13, I moved to Menlo Park, California, where Tom lived, and from New York. And we were in the same grade school class, 8th grade, and that's where we met. Tom was mentored by his father, who was very mechanical and would spend every evening and every day in the garage doing something, working on something. Tom's dad was a machinist at a tool and die maker at Hewlett-Packard Company. So most of Tom's time was spent in the garage.
My dad worked for Hewlett-Packard in 1951, and he worked right with Bill Hewlett and David Packard. And so in the first building on Page Mill Road in Palo Alto.
I remember one time he said, well, Dick, go get a gasket. I didn't know what a gasket was. So I went into the garage, and his dad was in there, and I said, could you tell me what a gasket is? And his dad literally just about fell off his chair laughing.
He didn't date girls. He didn't do much in terms of social things. He was not, he didn't participate in high school sports. He didn't any of that stuff. He just mainly was in the garage making things.
Tom's life was invested so much in making things and knowing all the bits and pieces and parts that make things go, and he got a lot of it from his father, who was a very gifted machinist.
Tom also liked cars a lot, and he had learned to drive when he was very young. I don't know how young, maybe 8 or 9 years old. Well, when he was 13, he was a go-kart racing guy, and he would build his own go-karts and put engines on them, and he was winning go-kart races at age 13, 14, 15.
Tom and I are high schoolers, and we had similar interests, particularly in motorcycles.
When he was 15, he was the California drag race champion for his type of motorcycle.
And so he was very good at acquiring things at a good price. If it was a go-kart or if it was a motorcycle, he would hand paint it. He would weld it.
My dad would come home from Hewlett-Packard, and I was just waiting because he'd always buy scrap. And I bought a lathe when I was in the 8th grade. For $200. And I put it had a 1/4 horse motor on it. I put a 1 horsepower motor on it, and it was so heavy that I had to put it up against the wall so the whole lathe wouldn't fall over. It was that powerful.
One summer, he bought an Austin Healey and decided to put a Corvette engine in it.
And that thing just screamed. It was unbelievable. It would shut down any car on the street.
He put a Corvette engine in an Austin Healey. The Austin Healey is a fairly small little sports car, and the Corvette was a big V8 and very powerful car.
It was so much horsepower, so little weight. And Tom, of course, would always want to race all these Corvettes with it.
I think the summer of his senior year, after his senior year, he took a job at a company where he ran a punch press, making parts. And he became the fastest punch press operator. And it's just because he was always thinking about ways to make it better, make it faster, make it work better.
But Tom had some challenges intellectually, dyslexia. He had some cognitive things where it just didn't add up sometimes in his mind. He had difficulty reading and putting some things together.
He went and talked to his high school counselor, and his counselor laughed at him and told him that he didn't think he could ever go to college because of his poor academic record. And it made Tom really angry because he knew he was smart enough to do it. And he resented that. It was sort of like it was a challenge for him. So it made him determined that he was going to go to college and that he was going to succeed in college. So he was admitted to BYU, and he and I were roommates our freshman year. And he worked really hard. He completely changed. He eventually graduated in manufacturing technology engineering and took a job with a new startup pharmaceutical company in Silicon Valley called Alza. Alza was founded by a man named Al Zaffaroni. And Tom's job was to do the production engineering for a new product called an OcuCert. And an OcuCert was a little, like a contact lens that was full of a drug that dispensed the drug slowly in the eye to help with glaucoma. And he started Survival Life on the side while he was working for Alza. And as a result of that, he was cleaning up some wheat one day with a Kirby vacuum cleaner. And the wheat ran through the turbine of the Kirby vacuum cleaner, and it burst the kernels. And he started thinking about, oh, maybe there's a better way to make flour.
Something, again, to me, would be, totally different realm. I mean, if you sent me out to the garage to vacuum up the wheat, I'd vacuum up the wheat and walk away. Well, this guy vacuums up the wheat and realizes that it was partially broken down and there was some wheat dust.
Over 30 years ago, a man figured out that when you pick up wheat with a vacuum, on the other end you have fine-grained flour. He took that idea and created technology to help make people's lives better by producing the kitchen mill.
And he was very, very passionate about the wheat mill, but he didn't know how to market it. And so he entered into a marketing agreement with a company called Magic Mill. It was here in Utah. Magic Mill had a big grain mill, with stone ground, and they were selling it sort of through a multi-level concept. And Magic Mill recognized that Tom's little mill was superior because it was small, it did a better job of making flour, it was much faster, it was cheaper to produce.
Genius in that kitchen mill. Terrific discovery, which really just mothballed the stone grinders.
But after about a year, Magic Mill decided to copy the mill, and Tom had patented the basic invention, which had to do with the grinding technique.
Some of these competitors got pretty angry. I mean, here I've been making my money selling these old contraptions, and this little kid comes in here and just tweaks my nose and takes my market away.
And they tried to get around the patent by creating something that was just slightly different. But it caused Tom to be very suspicious of people who might want to market his product or take it on, because he was, Magic Mill guys had basically, marketed for a year and then dumped him.
What would it take to create the perfect kitchen? If you're like most people, you'd start with a blender, a mixer, a food processor, and an ice crusher.
He became very interested in the idea of how you make bread, how the gluten develops in the bread. And the key invention of the mixer was that the mixer had a small computer chip in it, which allowed the sensing of the resistivity of the dough. And you could cause the mixer to shut off as soon as the dough was properly ready to be turned into bread.
You can hear that it stopped on its own. It said, "We're done." Let's find out how done we are.
The mixer was effectively a bottom drive mixer, and with the mixer, well, there was a blender.
Here comes the ice. We're going to set our champ at speed number 9 and push start, and away it goes. But the question is, will this drink be drinkable?
He bought out the rights to both the mill and the champ into his new company called K-Tech.
Turn the mill on. It's made by K-Tech, the same people who bring you the champ, and it's the perfect complement to the champ.
There are not that many people making homemade bread. That's the reality. So the market's not very big. I think for its market, it does a great job, but it's not a very big market. It's not a big market like the blender became.
Look at this. We got solid rocks, okay? What would happen if we put these rocks in a regular blender? First of all, don't even try it, please, because the answer to the question is the regular blender would burn out. Watch this videotape right now and look at what happened when we put rocks inside the champ. Again, never do this with your kitchen champ. And how powerful is it? 1,400 watts of power. That's about 4 times more powerful than any blender, mixer, or food processor that I know of. You see what it's doing to the rocks? Take a look. What were once solid rocks is now not so solid dust.
I think that there was a more emphasis on nutrition, and the idea of the smoothie kind of came about. You had Jamba Juice come into business, and there were many, many juice companies that were founded in the 90s. And people started looking at bread as being too fattening, and a lot of people became gluten intolerant, and so bread became less of an important food, whereas these other fruits and vegetables and things like that you could push in a blender became more important.
Everyone's got a round glass jar. That's the symbol of American blending.
The blender industry was almost all low-cost, low-quality blenders.
I got something in mind just for you.
It's just these cheap little blenders that had 10 little buttons on it, which went from almost nothing to not very much, and leaky, and they were all round, heavy, and could break. And Tom says, I think it's time to make a standalone blender.
And he thought that a standalone blender that was more powerful than what his blender on top of the mixer was would be a good product to make. At some point, he coined the name Blendtec, and K-Tech became Blendtec. But Blendtec was just a DBA. It was never a company name. It was just, it was K-Tech doing business as Blendtec, because he liked the name better. And I like the name Blendtec better. And that's really when the company started taking off.
As we always say. Don't worry about it. Kels can fix it.
Check this baby out. This is my idea. This is the iPhone 12 Pro Max Plus Plus. It makes calls. So that's its feature. We're excited for the new iPhone 12 Pro Max Plus Plus. And we're excited to blend it before anybody else gets their hands on one of these.
I'm not intimately familiar with what the market was doing prior to Blendtec, but it seemed from my perspective that it was stagnant, that new technology was not forthcoming. It was just the same old thing, maybe a different color, a different shape. With the introduction of K-Tech into the market and the blender, it started shaking things up.
No need to use spatulas to push things down in the blade, or spoons. Out the window.
One of Tom's passions was to be able to blend a smoothie without having to touch it, without having to put a stick or a plunger into the jar and push the product into the blade. One of the first models of blenders that K-Tech developed was an ICB, or in-counter blender. And this was targeted specifically for commercial market. We were able to take this blender and recess it into a counter. Rather than having it freestanding, it would set lower in the countertop. This product was way beyond anything that existed in the market. It was able to make smoothies faster than any other product. And the faster you work, the more noise it makes. The complaints were coming back that the employee couldn't hear the customer and take the order because of the noise the blender was making, and so that brought in a need for an enclosure. Tom integrated electronics or digital controls in the mixer blender that he built in the 80s, and later incorporated that same electronics and technology in his countertop blenders and his commercial blenders. The electronics was used to control the speed. It was also used to control overload conditions on the motor to protect the motor from burning up.
I'm here today to show you my latest invention. I call it the WildSide jar because it has a fifth wall, and boy does it blend wild things.
Sometime in the early 2000s or mid-2000s, Tom invented what he calls the WildSide jar. And the WildSide jar is nothing more than a 5-sided jar instead of a 4-sided jar.
Tom was so excited to show me this new jar that he had cobbled together.
And it's a significant change from the 4-sided jar in terms of the blendability of the product.
I had had a smoothie that I used to make for Jamba Juice with mangoes in it. Very, very difficult to blend. And it took about 45 seconds. Put it in this jar, and lo and behold, it made it in 14 seconds.
The fifth side, which by coincidence was tucked underneath the handle of the jar, tends to shift the vortex or the center of the movement of the smoothie or product in the jar off-center from the axis of the blade.
It was a tremendous breakthrough. And as we started to look at it, all of a sudden this fifth side offset the vortex of the blending.
And this was a great new innovation. It was patented.
We received in the mail from one of our previous customers a sample of a jar made by one of our competitors that was almost identical, to the extent that our lid fit in their lid perfectly. It was exactly the same height as our jar. So it was almost as if they handed a sample to their engineer and said, here, draw this, make it fit our blender base.
An Orem inventor gets a multi-million-dollar settlement against a big company he sued for selling his blender.
You know, you get something good and then somebody wants to try and take it away from you. But Tom prevailed. The people who were copying the device were found to not only infringe, but to willfully infringe, just flat out copied.
I feel it was justified to pursue them in a patent infringement lawsuit.
12 knockout appliances, each one among the best in its category. You're going to see how this compact powerhouse blows away typical auto bread makers, outperforms popular food processors, blasts away top-of-the-line blenders.
Before Blendtec was Blendtec, back when they were known as K-Tech, they had done an infomercial back in the early 90s for the Champ. And it was fairly effective. It really required demonstration. And so because the Champ had all these things that it could do, it was a pasta maker, and it had a blender, and it was a bread mixer, and did all these things. And it required, you know, a 30-minute infomercial to be able to demonstrate it all.
Today you're in for an incredible treat because you're going to see a new kitchen marvel that promises to be the very last appliance you're ever going to need to buy.
But then since then, they really didn't do much for marketing, and so Vitamix was the #1 blender company.
You know, Blendtec really has a superior product, but Vitamix had a superior method of marketing, which was very much based upon demonstrations in stores such as Costco.
When I first started, there was a first expansion of the building. And when I was interviewing, they took me through this new expansion of a building saying, this is where we hope to grow, and we need you to help us get there.
I was hired to be the webmaster, which is both the silliest and the most awesome title anyone could ever have.
I was hired literally the same time period that Ray was hired and that George Wright was hired. And so between George and Ray and I, we kind of made up the marketing team. And it actually came at a really good time in my life. I was living in another state, and I was in the middle of a divorce. And when that happened, I got a call from some friends of mine that said that they were looking for a video producer at Blendtec. I thought, okay, a blender company, how much work could we do filming blenders? This will be a job that lasts a couple of years at max.
Myself and Kels, Goodman, and George Wright, we all kind of started right kind of around the same time. There wasn't a lot of money being spent on marketing. There wasn't a lot really being done at all as far as marketing went.
It was a very, very small facility. There were a few employees there making great products and had a lot of engineering support, a lot of fun development, a lot of creativity. But in terms of the marketing, they weren't even sure whether they should market it under K-Tech or Blendtec. There was a lot of issues surrounding brand identity.
My first job was to produce training videos for Blendtec.
I think Blendtec was probably more well-known commercially.
There was marketing, but there wasn't really anything coming as far as marketing was concerned.
The ladder man himself, our friend Hal Wing.
Richard, how are you?
Hal?
Hal,
Robin.
good to see you.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
So at one point in time, we were actually in talks with the guys who made the Little Giant Ladder infomercial.
Funny enough, in my past history, I actually spent time working at Little Giant Ladders before they did their infomercial.
And we were getting ready to produce something. We weren't sure yet what we were going to do.
It's the strongest point of the ladder. We'll hold it at 1,200 pounds, and it's so easy to use. Just by using the hinge, you can put it in the storage position, or you can open it back up just like that. And the nice thing about it is it won't close up on you, it won't pull apart on you, and there are no spreader bars to get in your way.
So when I came on board with Blendtec, it was about the time Little Giant took off with their infomercial. And Tom was very intrigued by that and very excited about that.
So people were willing to spend, 4 easy payments of $99.95 to be able to have the Little Giant Ladder, because it could do all these things. So we figured that the Blendtec blender was similar, because it was a $400 product, and it could last forever, and it could do all these wonderful things. And so we needed to be able to have an infomercial to demonstrate this product.
And we went and we talked to them, and we considered looking at some type of an infomercial. And we looked at the costs, we looked at all of the things that were available for it, and it just wasn't the right fit for Blendtec at the time. I know Tom had been there, he was really intrigued by it, but based on the business situation, the circumstances, it just didn't make sense at that point in time for Blendtec.
Tom was into bigger, better, stronger products. Back in the day, he would use 2x4s to test his motors and blenders.
And kind of thought, well, that's cool. That's kind of cool to see, the CEO of the company just destroying 2x4s in a blender.
And one day, George actually watched one of his tests, and that required sticking a big 2x4 inside the jar.
He pulled me and Kels in together, and he said, we've got to do something with this. This is awesome, and we need people to see how powerful this blender is.
Hi, I'm Tom Dickson with Blendtec, and this is another one of our extreme tests that you don't want to try at home. And we're demonstrating our blender that is not your normal blender.
We went into the demo room, which is what it was called at the time, And it was really just a room where we would demonstrate blenders, and it would be near a sink and all this stuff where you could lay out the food, and then you could demonstrate how their products were working. And we were copying pretty much David Letterman's Will It Float. And so that's what we called it. Will it blend?
Will it blend? That is the question. We're going to start here with one of our more higher profile.
No, Tom, just start over.
We tried a few different things until we found the right recipe internally. It was as simple as taking Tom into a very familiar place for him. The blender was the hero in Will It Blend, and we were all just participants watching this blender do amazing things.
And my Uncle Floyd loves McDonald's, but he doesn't have any teeth anymore. So we're going to do a little experiment here and make him a nice drink that he can suck through a straw. This is our famous Coke warm chicken meal. We'll start with a can of Coke and about a quart and a half of ice, almost 2 quarts of ice.
And in one day, we actually did 6 episodes. We were able to crank out a bunch of episodes right in that day, but we didn't know what we were making.
We told Tom, hey, we want to do these videos, and he, okay, whatever. And I don't think he really knew what we were doing either. And so he was just being himself. And if you watch the videos, the first few that we did are much, much different.
At the time, it was just blend it and let people see it. And that was it. There was really nothing to it.
Will it blend? That is the question. I'm going to place approximately 50 marbles in a jar. And I'm going to run.
We released Marbles on October 30th of 2006.
You know, when we started Will It Blend, it was, I think there was MySpace, and you know, that was about it. It was before Facebook, before Twitter, before all that stuff. YouTube was fairly new. You didn't have a lot of YouTube celebrities like you do today, so it was a different time.
Kels put together some great videos. Ray Hansen put together a microsite, willitblend.com, and we conceptualized that we should have that divided into 2 parts. Try this at home and don't try this at home.
You know, we posted the videos, we posted a Will It Blend website, and we kind of told the company, hey, send your friends and family here. And you know, there wasn't for, I think, 2 or 3 days, it was kind of quiet. I went and posted a link to the marbles on dig.com, which was kind of the aggregator for what's popular online. And so I went and posted that, and I was watching it, and it was starting to climb, and I'm seeing 30, 50 new digs every minute.
And all of a sudden, I remember my phone just went nuts.
And I'm sending him text message updates kind of as the afternoon went on about, hey, this is kind of blowing up.
And he was watching the traffic real time, and it was just exploding before our eyes.
I thought something was wrong when I saw, you know, I'm looking at the number of views the video had and the traffic that we had gotten to the website, and I thought this can't be right. And then I went to dig.com, and it was right there, front and center on the front page. And that's when I knew it was going to be something gigantic.
Everybody wanted to know about it. Everybody wanted to hear a little bit more about it. They couldn't get enough of it, and Will It Blend was born.
This is glass dust. Don't breathe this.
There's an issue with the marbles where you're blending glass. And while you're blending the glass, it creates this dust. If you breathe it, you can actually get silicosis. So it was a sincere call that he made by telling us to not breathe this glass dust.
Cell phone smoke. Don't breathe this.
So for the first 10 episodes, when you hear "don't breathe this," It's the same line stolen from the Marbles episode.
That's one smoking iPod. Don't breathe this. Don't breathe this. Don't breathe this. Don't breathe this.
And I just kept doing that, and then finally it became kind of a signature piece that Tom started using all the time.
Within a week, we were getting calls from the Food Network, we were getting calls from the Today Show, we were getting calls from the Tonight Show. It became instantly popular to be associated with Blendtec and with Will It Blend. There was just a lot of excitement. People would talk when we would do Will It Blend sessions. We would have people standing outside peeking through the windows trying to get a glimpse of what was going to happen. We would launch new videos and there was just this magic buzz that would just shoot through the organization. It was just really just a lot of adrenaline. It was exciting.
George and Kels and I, we would sit around and think up stuff. We would go to Walmart, we would go to Lowe's, we would go to hardware stores and just walk the aisles. Hey, here's a 20-pack of lighters. Let's see what this does. Which I remember vividly as the day I thought I was going to die.
One of my favorites is the glow sticks, because we turned off the light and we're blending in the dark. It's really cool, and made a lantern.
That is a 12-hour lantern. Don't drink this.
And a lot of people have used that episode whenever he appears on TV. They'll show that one.
Maybe I'll say, I dropped my camera. Does my extended warranty cover this?
Probably my favorite thing we ever did was after we blended a video camera, returning it to Best Buy and setting up hidden cameras in their in their store. They didn't like that very much.
I got it, it was all in one piece. I tripped and it fell into a blender.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
When I first talked about doing Will It Blend 14 years ago and building a set, I have a friend named Clark Schaefer, and Clark Schaefer is, he does effects and he does miniatures and he does sets. He's a Hollywood guy, but he actually lives pretty local, and he's done some other work for me. And I told him I wanted something like The Price is Right. So that's what this is. This is The Price is Right's, what do you call it? That's their font. That's The Price is Right font. We blended something that was very significant in the timeline of Will It Blend, and that was an iPod. That's when things changed.
I love my iPod. It's got my own personal songs in it, it's got my personal books in it, but I'm ready for the latest. So out with the old, in with the new.
Once we started blending Apple products, our views went into the millions. And so the iPod was kind of the first one that really launched us higher, because all of a sudden we're blending an Apple product.
That's one smoking iPod. Don't breathe this. Now, Bev, now you know what I want for Christmas.
I think Apple never came after us. I think they enjoyed the publicity of us blending their stuff.
I love my new iPhone. It does everything. But will it blend? That is the question. And here we are in front of the AT&T store. And I'm here to keep up with the latest technology. I'm here to pick up my iPhone 3G. And I'm not the only one. Hey, can I see your iPhone?
No, you're gonna blend it.
Not me.
All of a sudden, the experts are talking about Blendtec, trying to decide, is this good, is it bad, is this new marketing, and it's fascinating because the fact that they were discussing the blender in this campaign was proof that it was awesome.
There's a company called Blendtec. They make blenders. I knew nothing about them, but they've started doing a website called Will It Blend. This is brilliant. There's a guy in a lab coat with glasses asking Will It Blend, and he's blending a crowbar, an iPod, an entire McDonald's Happy Meal. Now, if this isn't your idea of entertainment, well...
And here there are companies out there that have spent millions of dollars to make Super Bowl ads, and they're talking about will it blend?
You know, that's a lot of work to sell a blender. Why can't you take a page ad in the local newspaper and say blenders for sale, and if you want to buy a blender, there it is.
Times have changed, and it's not that way anymore. You have to create compelling content.
I would never imagine that a blender could do that. It's kind of scary.
Ta-da! Well, at first I thought this was a fake, you know, there was something wrong with either the rake or the blender, and then he dumped it out and there's a pile of just sawdust on the counter.
I love Will It Blend. I think it is the greatest thing that has been put on YouTube.
That we brought a laptop into the dining room during Christmas and watched all of the Will It Blend videos.
They said, oh, they're blending hockey pucks, and I said, I don't believe you.
I figured I'd check it out to see what it was like, and I thought it was pretty cool the first time I saw it.
My favorite Will It Blend is the one with the Barbies. He pours the thing out and he says,
Princess smoke, don't breathe this.
I think my favorite Will It Blend is the iPod.
I think the hockey pucks are very cool.
Those are tough puckies. Whew, what a smell.
The iPod, or it'd be the golf balls.
I'd have to say the golf balls. Golf balls go into the blender. And at this point, I whispered, should we move back? Is this thing going to explode at us? What's going to happen? Sure enough, these golf balls just disintegrated into nothing.
I think people liked Will It Blend because they loved seeing stuff destroyed. You know, I kind of called Will It Blend shock marketing. There was a thing called wigging out. A lot of people, I don't know if they remember that, but there was a video of a girl who was getting ready to get married, and she came in and she freaked out.
Jody? No! Jody, what's wrong? Jody? What is wrong? It looks so bad! Whoa, whoa, oh my God! Look at my hair! What?
And she started screaming that her hair was all wrong. Something was wrong about her hair. And we later found out that even though it looked like a home video, they were actually actors. And this was actually an ad where they created the term wigging out, that a hair care company actually created that ad to teach, you what wigging out meant.
The Aura brush. The soft bristles feel great on your tongue. You just go back and forth a few times, then go all the way back, pull it forward, and see what comes off.
YouTube has gone through some interesting evolution. It wasn't until 2009 that paid advertising showed up on YouTube. So anything before that was kind of experimental and homegrown. And Blendtec was in this well before 2009. I know that because Aura Brush got started in the summer of 2009, right when paid advertising showed up.
Toothbrushes are meant to clean
So
the surfaces of your
before that,
not your tongue. And the tongue
you didn't see major nationwide brands doing heavy ads on YouTube. You didn't see really any companies doing ads on YouTube. It was the place for cat videos and home videos and stuff that you filmed at the zoo with your family, which I think is also part of the reason that this pulverizing stuff in a blender was so surprising.
Well, I wonder if my new Blendtec blender is going to fit underneath my cupboard.
Blendtec had truly organic, viral videos. What we did at Aura Brush was we produced videos that had appeal and had an element of virality, but we then put ad spend behind them so we could drive views to those videos and get an audience. I think what Blendtec did was put a video out there and then people came. It was like Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Blendtec made these videos and the audience showed up. And that's impressive. That's maybe impossible to just choreograph that and have it happen organically today.
Being a high-tech company as we are here at Blendtec, there's no reason for old technology such as cassette tapes and the like. So these are all now on CDs,
And there's a half a dozen here, so let's just see what we can do here on the smoothie cycle.
You know, viral marketing really didn't exist at that time. I mean, it did, but not to the definition of what we know viral marketing to be today. And I think that we kind of helped shape that and bring it to what we know viral marketing to be today.
Very talented marketer named Seth Godin. Kels and I went and filmed a video with Seth Godin. He has a book out there that talks about Blendtec and about this campaign.
What's going on? We're going to take a few key ingredients. We're going to start with hemp. This is legal Canadian hemp, THC-free, high in fiber and protein. You want about that much.
Seth has a concept that he talks about permission-based marketing. Essentially, there are two kinds of people out there. There are people who create content that people want to watch, and there are people who create content that interrupts what people want to watch in the form of an ad, like a television commercial or an ad in a newspaper. People don't watch a television show so they can watch the commercials.
Check out these new Doritos Jack. The ads say that they're bigger, they're bolder, and they're thicker. And I must agree. Now, of course, Doritos will blend in a Blendtec Total Blender. So let's jack it up a bit. Let's add a half a dozen lighters.
What Blendtec did was we created content. We didn't create advertising, we created content. As a result, the companies who are used to advertising, interruption-based advertising, started to call us.
An Olympus digital SLR.
We had Dibs, we had Ford, we had Olympus cameras, we had all kinds of people calling us wanting to advertise, essentially wanting us as content creators to somehow put a mention of their name so that they could get their products in front of the audience that we had created.
There's an ice crush button and an ice cream button, and there's a soup button, a soup from a blender, and a dip button.
Hey, who you calling a dip?
Tom was great. We actually did a video together where we blended up a bunch of ore brushes and some little action figures of our ore brush characters, and it was a ton of fun. It was great to come, be on set, hang out with Tom, the friendliest guy you'll ever meet, and the company was kind enough to give us all Blendtecs afterwards. That's not a small gift. That's a pricey blender, and I was very happy to have it, and still use it years later.
Smells like halitosis.
That's because we actually gave you the used ones.
What?
No, that's not important. What's important is that it blends.
What do we do now?
You guys clean up. I have a tea time.
We definitely played a part also in what is now kind of this, there's this whole YouTube celebrity arena where people are making a living off of just putting videos on YouTube. That wasn't there when we started, but I do think that we kind of helped bring that along with the success that we had.
3 wide open, awesome stuff.
Yeah. It was November of 2008, and we'd already been on for several years. We were already a stamp on YouTube. And so we were asked by YouTube to go to this first ever live streaming event. So everybody who was famous on YouTube went to this event or had some kind of presence on YouTube. So I brought my wife with me, and we went with George, and we went first to Google. And we visited Google, went to the Googleplex. We spoke at Google. They asked us to speak there, and we talked about Will It Blend. Then we went right from Google to this YouTube live event in San Francisco. And it was really fun. It was amazing. We saw all kinds of YouTubers there, and Tom was such a celebrity there.
Don't bring this. Woo!
Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, good.
And then later we found out that we were sharing a green room with 2 members of the Mythbusters, Adam and Jamie. And then when we got to meet Adam, Adam told me, I love Will It Blend.
Will it blend? That is the question.
You've seen it on TV and the internet. The video series that got people talking about that guy who sticks crazy things in a blender.
Tom, as an entrepreneur, he's passionate about what he does. He's willing to invest his whole self into solving a problem or achieving a goal. And I think the essence of K-Tech and Blendtec has been that passion that Tom brings in every day that he comes to work.
Baseball season.
It is very, very difficult, shall we say, to hit a home run once. Tom has hit many, many home runs, and it's a credit to his genius and his perseverance.
Light sticks. Hockey pucks.
I think it was less a commercial desire to make a lot of money than it was to help people eat better and have the best product. He wanted to make the best blender, and he wanted to beat out Vitamix and make his blender be the clear best, and he always has that goal. He always wants it to be the highest quality, the best in terms of how it produces and what it does.
I'm going to blend my driver.
I would go to internet, search engine conferences or whatever it is where they're talking about marketing, and I'm sitting in the audience and I'm listening to this guy speak, and he's using what I'm working on as an example of, well, here's how you do it right.
You ever get those annoying Valentine's gifts and you don't know what to do with them?
So if you're looking for a recipe of how to market using YouTube and social media, you need to find an expert on social media that will take into account today and the things that are different compared to yesterday. If we did the exact same campaign today, it wouldn't have the same result.
I love my iPod, but I'm ready for the latest. So out with the old, in with the new.
Will It Blend and Blendtec had a huge impact on the history of YouTube. I think that's what showed people that you could reach an audience with a product. Certainly that was instructive to us at Orabrush, that we could use this medium to put a product in front of people and we could figure out a creative way for it to get seen. We knew that was possible because we'd seen Blendtec do it. Different techniques, but similar concept. Using the same platform, pushing a product.
Now you know what I want for Christmas.